Hi everyone. Today I'm going to review Unit 6 in a brief review. I'm going to go really fast, so if you need to pause and take in information, totally fine. I don't mind, I'm not there. So Unit 6 is officially called Consequences of Industrialization from 1750 to 1900. But I like to call it Imperialism because that is what this unit is really about. That is the word to know. That is the word of the day, I guess. So three major changes that are going to occur in this unit are imperialism, obviously. We're going to see resistance to imperialism, and we are going to see migrations. So let's start with imperialism. What is imperialism? Well, imperialism, it just means when a country establishes an empire in the form of having colonies, and the keyword is overseas colonies. Okay, so we're going to see some countries, some empires expand, and it's mostly Great Britain. Great Britain is in the green, and they're going to expand all over Africa, India. You can see they have some of Australia, and then we're also going to see France expand, and they're going to expand into Africa and Southeast Asia. And then we're also going to see Russia expand a little bit, like they're just going to kind of go off over there and kind of into China. This map was dated in 1914 during World War I, so that's why it says Soviet Russia, but just know that Russia's an empire. We're going to see some countries, some empires decline. So they're just going to kind of like dwindle and dial down. These are going to be Spain and Portugal. And as you can see, they still have a little bit of colonies in Africa. But ever since they lost their Latin American colonies, they just haven't been the same. We're also going to see China decline because they have enemies from all sides coming in and trying to carve them up. And this area that is known as the Ottoman Empire, they're also going to decline as well. And then we're going to see two new empires emerge. And these empires are the US, that's going to control Alaska, Hawaii, and then some Pacific islands like the Philippines, Guam. And then we're going to see Japan also expand. And Japan is going to control Korea, parts of China, and some Pacific islands. Okay, so what are some of the justifications for imperialism? What motivated these mostly European countries to go out and conquer other countries? So the first motive is going to be new ideologies that emerged from the Enlightenment and stuff like that. One of these ideologies is nationalism. Nationalism just means uber, like extensively high pride into one's country, my country over everyone else's. What better way to show that your country is great than by conquering other countries? Another motivation is going to be religion. So a lot of these countries, especially in Africa and Australia, they are not Christian. So the motivation for bringing Christianity to these regions is going to be one of the justifications for imperialism. We're also going to see stuff like social Darwinism pop up. Social Darwinism comes from Darwin's theory of evolution, which says survival of the fittest amongst animals, but some Europeans are going to take that and apply it to humans and societies. So they're going to say because European countries and mostly white countries are more industrialized and have superior technology, that means they are naturally inherently better than these non-industrialized countries like in Asia and Africa. That is obviously not true, but it was used as a justification for imperialism. We're also going to see some economic motives for imperialism. So we have all of these countries in Unit 5, they went through the Industrial Revolution, and now they can make stuff faster, quicker, cheaper, but they need stuff, they need raw materials to make those stuff. One of the raw materials is rubber, and rubber is only grown in these areas. Remember, It was only grown in Brazil until the seeds got smuggled out, blah, 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 blah. Um, so we need materials from all over the world. And how are we going to get those materials? Well, we'll just conquer the countries that the materials grow in, make the people there work the materials, and then they're going to give the materials to us that we are going to use to turn into finished products like clothes and tires, and we are going to sell it back to the world. So another economic motivation was new markets. Okay, so a lot of countries practiced what is called economic imperialism. Now, economic imperialism just means controlling a country's economy, and that therefore you are informally in control of that country through their economy. One example of this can be seen in Latin America, where the US's United Fruit Company controlled all of these countries in in Central America. How did they do that? Well, the United Fruit Company has a lot of land, a lot of plantations in Central America, and those plantations employ, let's say, a bunch of people in Guatemala. And most of the people in Guatemala are going to work in these plantations. Therefore, most of your money is going to come from that, the United Fruit Company. So in that way, by controlling that country's economy, you can control what that country does. So let's say the president of Guatemala wants to take away the land of these fruit companies. Well, these fruit companies employ most of the population, and they say, I don't like what you're doing there, so I'm just gonna pull all of my plantations out of your country, leave all of your people jobless, have your economy just crash. So maybe think about not doing stuff that I don't want you to do. So that's how they kind of controlled countries economically. Um, Another example of this is in China, where, if you remember this political cartoon, European countries and Japan are going to carve up China into spheres of influence, which just means that they control like a certain section of China. And China has a lot of rich imports and exports, so they have lots of product to sell. Okay, so a lot of these countries are going to use brutal tactics to control their colonies, such as King Leopold in the Congo, if you remember him. We're going to see the United States commit a lot of acts of genocide on their Native American inhabitants. We're going to see the British do that in Australia. And we're going to see the British treat the Indians inhumanely. We're going to see the British um, basically just like start a bunch of wars to get access to China's ports. And this is going to result in resistance to imperialism, which is our next change. So, resistance to imperialism is mostly going to take place in the form of anti-colonial movements, and these are going to eventually turn into nationalism. Okay, one example of this is in India, where Indian leaders gathered together and established the first Indian National Congress. Okay, some of these anti-colonial movements are going to be violent, such as the Taiping Rebellion and the Boxer Rebellion in China. We're going to see the New Zealand Wars is another form of anti-colonial movement, and movements in Africa are going to pop up as well. Some of these movements were violent, and some of these are going to be religiously motivated. And all of these movements are going to set the stage for decolonization in the 20th century. Now, the last big change in this unit is going to be migration. So, migration is going to take place in two forms. The first form is going to be non-coerced migration, which means just non-forced migration. It's going to be mostly people moving to cities and people moving to places for economic opportunity. That just means jobs. So one example of this is Chinese immigration from China to United States. And mostly these Chinese workers are going to come to help build the Transcontinental Railroad. Okay, The other form of migration that's taking place is coerced migration, which is forced migrations. That means these people did not have a choice as to whether they were migrating. It's mostly going to be obviously slavery from Africa to the Americas, um, and indentured servitude, like Indians going to Africa and Southeast Asia, and also Chinese going to Africa, um, uh, not Africa, Southeast Asia. Okay, so speaking, and all of these migrations are going to cause changes in societies. So, like the Chinese ended up in the US, they are going to obviously change the demographics of a society. And they're going to create changes in society, like establish their own little communities in these new countries. One example is Chinatowns. We see a Chinatown in almost every major US city now. We have a Chinatown here in Houston. We're also going to see changes in language. So new words might be incorporated into the home country's language. We're going to see changes in food. Why do you think Mexican food is so popular in the US now? We're also going to see changes in culture, in American culture, like the Irish when they came to the US. They established a new holiday, which is now as St. Patrick's Day. They brought their cultures and customs into the US. So I hope this was not too long, and I wanted it to be really short, but it's obviously a whole unit, so we got to take some time. That's it for Unit 6. I'll be reviewing all of the units from Unit 6 to Unit 1. So hope this helped.